Don't allow society to define that success, because that's what creates stress, uneasiness, sadness, depression. These limiting beliefs that are instilled in us, usually from a young age, are the things that causes that stress, which makes us work 80, 90 hours a week. Define it for yourself. Stop worrying about what other people are thinking and take action in building your dream life, not the dream life your neighbor wants for you. If we can start to pay attention to what is happening for us instead of to us, right? Don't play the victim. Why is this happening for me? What's the lesson I need to take from this? And how can I fast forward? It makes it a lot easier.
What if happiness isn't a destination, but a daily decision to grow? Today's guest has built a global movement around that idea, reminding us that no matter where we start, we all have the power to create the life we truly want. And I think, as you'll hear him say, it's not the destination, it's the journey. Justin Schenck joins me today on Code 3 Life Reinvented. I'm your host, AJ Jones. Thank you for investing a little time with us today to hear about Justin, his stories, and his very impactful views that have shaped his success. But before I bring him in, let me just give you a little rundown on his background. Justin Schenck, he's an entrepreneur, speaker, and he's host of a very, very popular podcast. I feel super grateful to have him on as a guest on my show. He hosts the Growth Now Movement podcast. It's top rated. I looked at listen notes for those who know what that is, and it is a top 1% globally podcast. They may even be 0.5% if I read the data right. People from 100 countries do listen to his show. He was named as one of Inc. magazine's top 8 podcasters to follow. Good on you, Justin. Good on you. I could only be so lucky, I hope one day. He's been featured in Thrive Global and recognized as an icon of influence by new media. He's the founder of podbrand.io. It's a podcast launch and support and marketing agency. He's the creator and host of the Growth Now Summit Live, a huge go-to event for entrepreneurs and forward thinkers. Based on all of that, what I find so interesting about Justin's story is his story about reinvention and proving that the past doesn't need to define your future. I think that's a wonderful jumping off point, Justin. Let's welcome you in. It's good to have you on the show. And let's hear about that past and how you refuse to let it define your future.
First of all, AJ, thank you so much for having me, man. Honored to be here. I love what you're creating with this message and honored to be a small part of it. Excited to have you on my show in the future as well. I think it's going to be an incredible conversation for my audience. It's funny because my past is something I used to be ashamed of in so many ways, but I realized that it's really the thing that has helped me define myself. So many people take their past and it allows them to define them, but it gave me the opportunity to define. And so if I go all the way back to high school, I always jokingly say that if there was a least likely to succeed senior superlative, I would have won that one. I had a 1.7 GPA. My mom was in the middle of a 20-year battle with opioids and my dad was in jail. Society would say, you've got no shot, kid. The statistics say that if your parent's an addict, you have 50% chance of being an addict. And if your parent's in jail, you have 50% chance of ending up in jail. And so if you do the math, I'm 100% screwed. Like I've got no shot with where we're going here in the future, but then I was lucky enough at the age of 19, since I didn't go to college, I got a job in direct sales. I learned a lot of human skills, communication and sales, which was great. But the most important thing was it introduced me to self-development. I remember my mentor handed me a book, To Move My Cheese. And if you've never read it, it's a phenomenal book, quick 45-minute read. But it spoke to me at my core. And that book talks about no matter what you do, things are going to change around you. Things are going to happen around you that you have no control over. But what you have control over is how you react to those things, how you react to those changes. And it spoke to my core. And I realized in that moment, I can define my future. It doesn't matter what my parents chose. It doesn't matter how bad I did in school. What matters are the choices I make today to create a better life for myself tomorrow. And that really began what, was a 11-year journey to when I finally became a full-time entrepreneur, defining my own life and defining what is success. I think that's different for everybody, but it was that moment that kind of really changed all that for me. And then that really was the beginning of the journey with lots of ups and downs, which I'm sure we'll get into. But that moment for me really was that spark and that aha moment of I can create my future.
You had a 1.7 GPA. Your mom was in a 20-year battle with opioids and your dad was in jail. I just want to pause on that. How you framed the percentage of success or percentage of not succeeding based on those environments that you were raised with or around. I just have to ask, where were you when your dad's in jail and your mom's struggling with opioids? Who took care of you? Can you share a little insight on what was going on at that time of your life?
The funny thing is my mom battled opioids for 20 years, which unfortunately she lost that battle. But my mom beyond that was a great mom. She was always there for me. She always empowered me to chase my dreams. She always believed in what I was trying to build. And that was multiple failed businesses that she always supported me through. I was really fortunate that I had a loving mother who supported me, even though she had her own demons. Now, to take it a step further, and I think this piece is important, I had great aunts and uncles who showed me what life could be, right? Like I saw my parents and the life they chose, and I said, I know that I don't want that. But then I also saw my one aunt and uncle have a wonderful marriage, and I was like, I want a happy household. Yes, they had their fights and arguments like every other couple, but they loved each other. And I was like, I want that. My other uncle was a very successful financial advisor. And I was like, oh, that's nice. A nice house and a nice car and the flashy things. And so I had this view of like, hey, there is a way that I can map a great life because I know other people who have done it, right? And so a lot of people will sit there and go, hey, look, I was raised in a terrible place in the middle of a city and we were poor. I watched my mom's car get repossessed, all these things. But you can always go out into your peripheries and say, oh, there's something else. But I always have so much gratitude, and I'm glad that I can come onto these shows and talk on stages about how great of a mom my mom was. I think love is something that everybody needs and not everybody has. Love is such a powerful thing to empower people. And I remember a moment, I was in my 20s and I had my first failed business just happened, right? And I used to do I had a company that would put together live events, seminars, which we referred to them back then. This is before social media was a big thing, and started out really good. And then we ended up losing all of our money on a big investment that we did to try and build it to the next level. And I remember calling my mom and saying, hey, look, we're shutting the doors. I was probably crying on the phone. My mom said something that is basically what a mom would say to you, but it was so empowering to me. And what my mom said was, Justin, you're headed in the right direction. Keep your head up and keep moving forward. And I realized in that moment, it's a journey. As long as I'm headed in the right direction and I'm moving forward, I can continue to build the next possible thing. A mom that, although she had her demons, gave me that spark to go, okay, what's next? What's the next thing? And it allowed me to stay curious and wonder where else I can take my life. I was fortunate in those moments that those things happen. And so I would say to people who are struggling, find somebody in your close periphery that might be a shining light. It might be a dim light. It might be far away. But stay focused on that because you can really build that life that you want.
I agree. It's going to take some redefining what's possible and redefining success, what that means authentically to us. And I'm going to, as they say, put a pin in that because I'm going to come back to that in a second. But let's go back. You're 19, you started a sales job and you saw the path to entrepreneurship and to where you sit today as I see you on the podcast. Can you just give us a minute of that career and story arc there, please?
Yeah. So 19, direct sales, did really well with the company, became a manager, was running an office. And then I was 20 years old and my mom got to a point in her life where she wasn't holding down jobs and she needed some support. And I moved from New Jersey to Pennsylvania, where I live now, to help her with some of that stuff. So I left that job and then I started to climb through corporate. I ended up getting these corporate jobs because of the work history with this direct sales job. Every job I was applying to, like, you need a bachelor's degree. And so I was like, I'm never going to get any of these jobs, but got into medical sales and medical sales management and did really, really well. But always had that dream of like building something and starting my own business. First was the live events. The second thing that I tried was with a business partner. We tried to build an app, which is a lot easier now than it was 15 years ago. That was a huge money suck and failed miserably. The third piece was I started a podcast, which at first didn't do well. And I started podcast production, which failed and had to go back into another job. But the key here is like, I kept trying new things, right? If I had to define what I wanted to be when I was 17, I couldn't say podcaster. Podcasting didn't exist when I was 17. I didn't know that was even a thing. I was like, look, I've had these failed businesses. I don't know what I'm doing. Let me interview entrepreneurs through a podcast and pick their brain and essentially form my own school, really have conversations with these individuals and learn and start to implement that into my life. And that was the idea behind the podcast. I just wanted to learn. I didn't know I'd grow an audience. 6 months before I launched the show, my mom lost her battle to opioids. I was up in Cape Cod, Massachusetts. My aunt and uncle have a house up there. And I was recording the intro to the podcast when I got a phone call from my sister. She said, the doctor said you need to come. I drove 7.5 hours down to South Jersey where my mom was intubated in a bed. And I remember standing next to her bed and I said, Mom, I don't know what it's going to take, but I promise you I'm going to make you proud. About 5 minutes after that, she took her last breath. When I launched the show, the conversations organically started to talk about rock bottom moments and self-love. And it was organic conversations of a realization for me of, I didn't know it at the time, but what I later figured out was my mom didn't die because she was an addict. My mom died because she didn't love herself. And then the second awakening was I didn't love myself either. I realized that all through my 20s, I was chasing this idea of building a business because I needed recognition from the outside world. Society told me, specifically as a male, that, hey, if you get success, the money, the cars, the house, the girl, the things, then you can be happy. Then you can love yourself. When I started to have these conversations with powerful people on the podcast, and I was talking about, hey, what is self-love to you? How do you define that? What happened in your rock bottom moment? How did you push through? I started to realize that the self-love piece comes first. The success comes second. The inward work is the thing that you need to focus on. And then the outside begins to project like a mirror, and all the success would happen. And so I always say the first 2 years of my podcast, and you can go back and listen, they aren't very good. I was still trying to figure it out. But every single question was for me. And it was really about hearing it, taking it in, taking the things that worked for me and implementing them into my life. Now I have daily rituals and routines that I do that I've learned from these people. And then it started to obviously snowball, and the success of the podcast, and then a business came from that. But I think the real secret is like showing up authentically as yourself provides the roadmap for your future and your happiness. It took me a really long time because I was ashamed of my past, and I hid it a lot. But then when I opened up about who I was and how I was showing up, the world presented me with success, how society would define it, but then also success in my friendships and the people I got to spend time with. And now my wonderful wife, who I would have never met if I didn't do the work. And all these things that was such a blessing all started from that rock bottom moment of my mom passing away.
As you're talking, I'm just smiling like crazy because I think what you're saying is almost like the playbook in many ways for what I'm doing. Not only do I host this podcast, Code 3 Life Reinvented, I'm also the founder and CEO of a company called More. It's about career transformation and wellness. I've got 6 pillars of our methodology. And the very, very first one is called Establish Self-Compassion. And I think you might say self-love. I think they're very similar. And that's where it needs to start. And if you don't anchor there, it's really hard to build anything on top of a very shaky foundation. I always use this house metaphor. Self-compassion, maybe you'd say self-love, helps build that foundation. That foundation is solid. You can build something beautiful up on top of it that will withstand all weather events, if you will. If you'll just play with my metaphor a little bit longer. Thanks for sticking around on that one. But I'm so glad you said that because that hit home for me to hear you say that. Thank you so much for that, Justin. I think as you tell your story, what comes out to me is that in the early days, it was about success, like as we at society at large define it, as you so well articulated. Get the cars, get the fancy job title, the nice vacations and all the entrapments and the things and so on and so forth. But you later found that maybe wasn't the way. That wasn't the path. And it was rooted in authenticity. I could not agree with you more. That is absolutely, in my opinion, spot on center of the target. So how do you enable your authentic self to show up every day? Because a lot of people, I think they're challenged by that, right? Like we wear masks. We go to a corporate environment and we have to put a mask on. In fact, we were talking before we started recording. You were asked, well, how do I call you, Adrian or AJ? My name is Adrian Jones. And I've never really brought this up publicly or in social media, but just in the spirit of being raw, honest, and vulnerable, I was born Adrian Jones. My mom's English. Her brother that she adored was named Adrian. It's a very English masculine name. I grew up in Colorado. I got a classmate around 2nd, 3rd, 4th grade, somewhere in there. It was a she with the spelling Adrienne. And then I got bullied into the next county around Adrian being a girl's name in the 70s and early 80s. And a friend came up to me and said, hey, your initials are AJ. Can we call you AJ? And I was like, yes. And for most of my life, that's how I've been known by my friends, by my family, those I'm close with. But when I entered the professional world in my early 20s and I got into financial services, I thought I would be better served to go by my given name, Adrian, because it would be more professional. Even though I associated more with the name AJ, I felt Adrian would show up in a different way. So I started wearing that mask early, and I've never shared it to the outside world. I want to go back to the question I was trying to ask you. How do you show up authentically? How can we turn that into a learning for people who are struggling with the masks they wear, the expectations that weigh them down and get them pointed in directions they don't really want to go when they look inside and see who they truly are?
Yeah, it's a really great question. And you're right. A lot of people struggle with it because they feel like they need to present a certain way. Like they need to present as successful, whatever society says they're supposed to present as. First of all, I don't know how to be anybody else but me. I remember in my early 20s, I was dating a girl, meeting her family for the first time. The girl's mom said, you talk about your mom, but you don't talk about your dad a lot. Why don't you talk about your dad? And I looked at her and I said, that's because the only time I talk to my dad is during visiting hours. The girl that I was dating at the time, she like grabbed my leg under the table. In that moment, I realized the relationship was over. That was the beginning of the end of the relationship. I also had this aha moment of like, I was free. It was the first time I spoke about that. I didn't have to pretend like I was somebody else. That was like the beginning of the tipping point. And then I'll take you to a specific moment where I owned it a lot more. I had a guy on my podcast. His name is Preston Smiles. A lot of people may know him. He's written a number of books and he's out of Austin, Texas. I was like, what would you say to somebody who's afraid to share their true, authentic story and the path that they've been through? And he said, at any given point, there are 75,000 people in the world that need to hear your message specifically from you. And then he paused and he said, how selfish of you not to share your story.
Wow.
Imagine if your authentic story, although you may have some shame built around it, can shift and change somebody's life because you decided to authentically share your story, because everybody has that power. Whether you want to start a podcast or a YouTube channel, or you just help people one-on-one, sharing your story is the thing that people go, I needed that. That's refreshing. It gives them the permission to be authentically themselves. So from that moment on, I decided to not hold back anymore, because I was like, well, if I'm going to change a life, I need to share. I remember early on in the podcast, nobody was listening. And there was probably like 45 downloads an episode. Every once in a while, we'd have a big name and it would jump up. We'd do it back down to 45 downloads. I was at probably episode 43 or 44. And I was like, what am I doing? I'm showing up for almost a whole year of this thing. I'm going to get to the year and I'm going to shut it down. Like that was that's where I was. And what ended up happening was mind blowing. I got this message on Facebook, and it was probably a day or two after I had the thought of stopping after 52 episodes, because I promised myself I'd do a year. I got this message from somebody from Japan, and it said, because of your show, I decided not to take my life.
Wow.
And it was this crazy moment of like, okay, I remember exactly where I was. I was eating lunch at a restaurant, sitting at their bar. I remember I was eating a flatbread pizza and a Diet Coke. And I read this message on my phone and I was like, oh my gosh, like, okay, I'm going to keep showing up. Right. And then it was about the 1.5 year mark. My audience started to grow organically because people were sharing it out and telling other people about it. And then the 2-year mark, just about the 2-year mark, Inc. magazine put me on this list and everything changed. And I realized sharing your message authentically is massively important. It can save a life. You save one life, you change the entire way this world rotates. Not only that, showing up consistently, even if you're not getting the results you need right away, like that's important too. And it's that you hear this all the time. You go to the gym once, you're not going to have a six pack. You got to show up time and time again and keep showing up. The reality is that's the same in sharing your message. That's the same in making an impact. That's the same in all those things. I would say to people, if you are worried about sharing your story, be more worried about the people that you should be helping with sharing your story. It makes it a lot easier to show up. It's uncomfortable for sure. I'm sure there's even time, not lately, but I'm sure there's been times even past when I thought I was over it. Like, oh, I don't know if I should share that. I don't know about that. You could save a life. Keep showing up and pushing through those discomforts, and the world will change because of you.
I think something that so many of us struggle with, myself included. We are raised to do these things somehow or other, whether it's from our parents, from our peers, from the media we consume growing up, our teachers. So many of us believe that there are certain markers that will define success. Big house, cars, fancy vacations, private school for children, the list goes on. You at an early age, as I understand it, had got a really good handle on what success is to you. And let's dig into that and pull it apart a little bit. What does it mean to you, and how did it evolve when you started having those ahas? I think this is good learning for people.
I think it'll evolve again. I've had my podcast for 9.5 years, and the question that I ask every single person is a 2-part question. First part is, what's your definition of success? Second piece is, what are 3 things you do every single day to ensure that success for yourself? It's usually in your 20s. It's financial success, right? Like, because it's ingrained in you by society that once you get $1 million and you get all these things, the reality is, I promise you that the second you get that $1 million, the next thought is going to be, okay, how do I get 10? Because there's no actual final fulfillment in that. To me, success is to do what I want, when I want, with whom I want. So what does that mean, Justin? I want to be able to do what I want, meaning finances and resources aren't a problem. Meaning if I want to travel more, I just need to make a little bit more. With whom I want. It's usually just my wife and my stepkids. Keep my circles as small as possible. The introvert in me loves that idea. And so, okay, I want to be able to take my wife and the kids and enjoy the process when I want. Time freedom. Those 3 things together define success for me. I sat down one day and I was like, for my business, what does that mean? My first thought is, how much money do I want to make? Right? Oh, $1 million. I want to make $1 million this year. Well, why do you want to make $1 million? Most people don't have an answer for that. But if you go, what do you want your life to look like? I want to be able to smoke nice cigars, and that costs me about $150 a week. And I want to be able to travel, and that costs me this. And I want a house, that's how much this is. And you kind of break it down, and if you do the math, you go, well, that's $400,000 a year. Well, that's a lot easier, right? Like $400,000 is a lot easier than $1 million a year. Great. Now, all of a sudden, the financial goal isn't a strain and a burden. It's a goal because I'm creating a life. And so I think that we don't even know how to define it for ourselves because society says $1 million, then you're successful. I always say, what do you want your day-to-day look like? And I work about 15 hours a week, to much of my wife's chagrin at times. But like, I work 15 hours a week. If I wanted to make more, I could work more, but I make enough. It's enough for me. And I no longer have to chase anything else because I've figured out those small pieces of to do what I want, when I want, with whom I want. I'm successful. Now, as I get older, I'm sure it'll turn into a legacy piece. What legacy do I want to leave behind? Now, all of a sudden, that is, I want to make more so I can give back more. I want to be able to donate more money. I want to do this. I want to do that. So it's a forever evolving thing of what is success. But right now, I can tell you I'm successful for me. And maybe when I turn 50 in 9 years from now, I'll have a different definition of success, and that'll take a pivot and a bit more work. But don't allow society to define that success, because that's what creates stress, uneasiness, sadness, depression. These limiting beliefs that are instilled in us, usually from a young age, are the things that causes that stress, which makes us work 80, 90 hours a week. Define it for yourself. Stop worrying about what other people are thinking and take action in building your dream life, not the dream life your neighbor wants for you.
Given those success criteria, talk to me about fulfillment in your life. Where does it come from? How do you tap into it? And if it feels like it's not quite there, how do you get it back?
Fulfillment for me are the relationships that I have. And so they're always there, right? Because I nurture relationships. It's relationship first. And I realize that, like, who am I spending my time with? Who am I surrounding myself with? That's what is fulfilling to me. It's funny, I go to speak at an event, or I'll show up at a local networking event. People are like, wow, I can't believe you're here. I'm honored to meet you. People think that once you reach a certain point, the friendship or the relationship isn't attainable. I have two rules if you want to be in my circle. One is you give more than you receive. You're not trying to get into a friendship with me to get something. The second piece is be true to your word. So whatever you say, just show up and keep doing it. I have friends who make $50,000 a year, and I have friends that make $300 million a year. I don't care about that. What I care about is who you are and how you're showing up. And so as long as you're a good person, I'll allow myself to spend time with you, and I'll enjoy that time, and I'll feel fulfilled. I'm not a things person. If you said, what's your favorite item that you own? I don't have an answer for you. I'm just not a things person. So there's no fulfillment in that. You'll quickly learn that if you have fulfillment in that, it will quickly die. I can't tell you how many billionaires that I know who reached the billion mark and loved it. Private jets and massive houses all over the world. Like, sounds great, right? But they're broken. They are very, very broken because they haven't figured out the piece that actually makes them happy. I think the statistic is the amount of money and happiness, and where it correlates with the amount of money per year you're making that will equal happiness, is like something like $75,000 a year. And that means your bills are paid and covered and all those things and whatever. And so fulfillment for me is spending that time with whom I want, people that help fill my cup, the people that I get to choose time with and spend time with. And the podcast has actually given me the opportunity to be able to spend time with the greatest people in the world and build friendships with some of the most captivating human beings I've ever come in contact with. For me, it's really the people who I spend time with fulfills me every single day. And honestly, like, if I had to break it down, like, if even those things fell apart, like, I'm lucky that I have an incredible wife who supports me and helps fulfill me. And that's all I need. I'm a very simple man, which is probably why I can get away with working 15 hours a week. But yeah, so for me, fulfillment is the relationships that I'm able to build.
Amazing. Community is so huge. And I'm so happy to hear you've got a very supporting wife. I do too. Thanks to the fabulous Mrs. Jones out there for all you put up with me. It's made a huge difference, that partnership that I'm very lucky to have with my wife, Liz. For those that are listening to this and they hear, gosh, this guy hit the early 40s, hitting that chapter in his life, and he's working 15 hours a week. He's super happy. Like, he's got a lot figured out that's going right for him. I want a piece of that, but how the heck do I get there? Like, I've been working in my career, making up a hypothetical here, make up an avatar that Fred has been working and slogging away in, I don't know, banking, just picking an industry for no reason whatsoever, but it came to my mind. All right. So Fred's been in banking. He's 41 years old, listens to this podcast. He's grinding it out. He's just trying to get the next bonus and all this stuff. What do I do to be more like Justin? Is it the right move or not? Justin's got his own life path, his own preferences, his own needs. Is it right for me?
It goes back to the success question, right? Everybody defines it differently. Working 15 hours a week or working 40 hours a week or working 80 hours a week, are you fulfilled? Sometimes we worry too much about the outside noise. I'm not the entrepreneur that tells everybody they should be an entrepreneur. I don't think that's the path for everybody. If you're working a job where you clock in and out, but you can afford 3 vacations a year with your family, that's great. Focus more on the things that are fulfilling you versus the things that are making you miserable. That's just a simple mindset shift. Like if I can go, hey, me having to do this job gives me the life that is fulfilling to me, focus on that portion of it. Now, if you're going, I'm miserable in my job, I hate this, I want to get out, I might end up with 2 heart attacks, like I don't know where this is going. I would say step back and start asking yourself, what am I really good at? What is my superpower as a businessman or an entrepreneur? You can very quickly monetize that because whatever you have, people know that that is your superpower and you might not even know it yet. So start asking questions from people around you. What is my superpower? And then start to teach people that, right? Like the most scalable thing is your knowledge. I will tell you that I will invest large amounts of money to a person who does something at a peak position to help me get there as quickly as possible. Everything that I've built now and how I can afford the life that I live and only work 15 hours a week is because I designed it that way. When I started out as an entrepreneur, I ran a podcast production company, which means I couldn't afford workers. So I was sitting there editing podcasts, sun up to sundown. I was trying to put things out there. I was trying to get on sales calls. I was trying to do all these things. And then I shifted to coaching one-on-one, which then all of a sudden there was financial freedom. I started actually making some good money. I had a conversation at an event that I was speaking at with another speaker. And he's like, dude, you are in a business for podcast production and you're battling to go broke first because everybody's undercutting the person. They're trying to be the cheapest, whatever. He goes, but you're the only one doing it that is an Inc. magazine top-rated podcaster. People will pay you for that knowledge. I went home and made $22,000 in the next 3 weeks and I never looked back. And that's the scalable piece, right? I was doing one-on-one coaching, but I was still working a lot of hours. The money was better, but I was still working a lot of hours. I hired a coach. What can I do to make sure I'm working less, but making more? Well, it's called group coaching. How do I get into that? Cool. This is how you do that. So it's about asking the right questions. 1, what is your superpower? 2, then how can I scale that to make more in the amount of time that I'm working? Right? Now I'll take this into a service-based business. So I own Pod Brand. What we do is we create social media content for podcasters based off of what they record from their show. A guy came to me who I have used as a designer for years, and he's like, Justin, you've sent me so much business. We should do something together. My initial reaction was, no, I don't want to do that. That means time. That means all these things. I was like, okay, well, let me think about it because I want to help you out and I want to see what we can do. And so I found a way to create automatic lead generation through LinkedIn where I didn't have to do any work. Then I said to him, I go, look, as this grows, I'm going to pay you 40% of everything that comes to the door, no matter what. But on the flip side of that, as we grow, you have to hire people under you and you pay them out of your 40%. Now he lives in India, so his cost of living is way little. And before I had this conversation with him, I said, how much money per month do you need to live the life that you want? Not pay your bills, but live the life that you want. He goes, $1,000 a month. And I was like, done. So I knew he could make $3,000 to $4,000 a month just off of him doing the work. So then I want you to build a team under you. I don't do any of the work other than some communication with him and some communication with clients as they're onboarding. And it's been a gift. But I also, that's a process of like, I knew over the years of me building businesses that like, this is the only way I'm going to do it moving forward. People need to think outside of the box to say, okay, well, how can I build this without having to take a ton of my time? Right? I launched a mastermind because I wanted to help entrepreneurs build the life that they want. And I have them define it themselves. But then I also realized that a mastermind can add 6 figures of business to my income. And I work 2 hours a month. Like, that's pretty incredible, right? Like, that's an incredible way to add it. And so I was like, cool, that might be something fun. Now, I'll tell you this. I would spend 40 hours a month on this mastermind because it's my favorite thing. But it's designed in a way that I can go, I'm going to work 2 hours a month. This is how much it's going to add to my bottom line. Plus, I'm helping them do that same thing for their family and for their lives, right? So you have to ask the right questions. You have to be curious about what's possible. There is no one right way to do anything. And there's people already doing it, right? There's a guy, his name's Chris Williams. He helps people build those masterminds at such a high level and such a high scale. I had him speak to my mastermind. He works 12 hours a week. And so I went, man, I got some work to do. right? Like I'm working more than you. Now I got some work to do. And so always think outside of the box and start shifting things around a little bit. Yes, you can build a business without killing yourself. It might be a little bit different, might take a little bit longer, but it's worth it if that's the life that you want.
It's definitely worth it. If you're willing to commit and you see that you're not where you are and you're not living the life you want, things have to change. You got to redefine what's possible. And maybe that's a little trite, but it is so true. And you've got to get creative. Like, how do you get into that discovery mode? Like, how do I redefine what's possible? Where do I start? And I think you gave a gold nugget that I just want to reiterate because I think it's really important is reach out to your network. Ask people, what are you good at? If you're not sure how that superpower is being received or observed by others, go ask them. Ask your colleagues that you have a good relationship with, your friends, whatever.
If you're uncomfortable with that, just ask yourself, what do people come to me and ask me for? What are they coming to me the most about? That's your superpower, right? Mm-hmm. Those are the things, like there's the universe constantly giving you these signs and where you're supposed to be that we just don't pay attention because we're stuck in the rat race. I did all that stuff while I was a bachelor. I didn't have a family. I didn't have kids. I wasn't married. It was just me. And so there are people listening to this. Well, Justin, I've got a family. I've got young kids, a wife who is a stay-at-home mom, or a husband who's a stay-at-home husband. That's not possible for me. But the reality is it is. There's somebody in my mastermind, I won't say her name for the sake of privacy, but somebody in my mastermind who has a very successful business. She brought her husband into the business, so she's fully the breadwinner, and he works in under her umbrella. They have 2 young kids, and she came to me, and she's like, I want to join your mastermind. I go, well, what do you want out of it? You've already hit your financial marks. What do you want? And she goes, well, I'm a workaholic. I love working. I'm super competitive, but I have an 18-month-old daughter, and I want to spend more time with her, but I don't know how to get it on my own way. She didn't see a path because she was the workaholic who wanted to work, which, by the way, if you want to work, great. But if you realize that your relationship with your children and your spouse aren't the best, you're going to have that conversation. What's more important? We were able to really define her business where now she works way less. She's hired a team. She works way less. The team is doing what they're doing. She's scaled her business. She's making more money than she was making before. And my favorite posts of her are of her and her kids at the park at 2:00 on an idle Wednesday, which she would have never done before because she was a workaholic strapped to her desk, super competitive. It's really about finding somebody who might help you navigate that because you have so many blind spots because you can be successful on the outside, but internally you're having that dialogue of like, well, what's more important here?
I think you have to get creative, right? For me to do what I want to do, right? The fabulous Mrs. Jones and I observed that we can't continue to stay in a high cost of living market for us to do what we want to do at this stage in life and what I need to do for me in terms of my career and the impact I want to make post financial services. For example, I'm a native Californian. If you and I had this conversation 18 months to 2 years ago, and you said, hey, would you ever leave California? I'd say pound sand. It's never happening. It ain't happening ever. Like literally ever, because I am a native Californian. This is my place. These are my people. Life has a way of showing you different cards sometimes. And for us to do what we wanted to do, and to live the life that we wanted, we had to make some changes. And they weren't easy decisions to make, but when you put them in the context of, will we feel more fulfilled, less stressed? Will life be more enjoyable? Can we do the things we want to do when we want to do them and with whom we want? Yeah, that feels really good. It takes a lot of courage. There's no doubt. If you have responsibilities, if you're in the sandwich generation, you got kids in college, your parents are aging, you're caring for them spiritually, financially, however it is, it's a lot to go through. It's a lot to welcome disruption in this way. But at what cost, right? What's the cost of not doing that?
Yeah.
And that's where it gets interesting. What do you think are some of the big costs?
People think that, oh, this is the way I've always done it. This is the way that it always needs to be done. It's just not true. The cost could be death. If I look at your story, like your story is so impactful to be like, I have to make a change here. Or it could be divorce. It could be whatever, right? There's so many costs that if you don't make that shift, what's the end outcome? Here's the reality. The only way we're all getting out of this world is death. I better find a way to enjoy the life that I have, whether that life is 30 years, 40 years, 50 years, 150 years, doesn't matter. Find a way to enjoy every moment. And that rat race is not the answer. How many people have you spoken to or met in your life who worked 65 years of their life miserable just so they could live the next 10 before they died in a relaxation state or doing the things that they want on a Wednesday morning or whatever the case may be? Like, that sounds miserable to me. How can you create that life for yourself now? I live in a town called Wyomissing, Pennsylvania. It's a town nobody's ever heard of unless they're a huge Taylor Swift fan because she was born here, right? Like, so that is the only way somebody's ever heard of my town. And I remember when I started out as an online entrepreneur, I started meeting people all over the country, San Diego and Miami, LA. And they're like, Justin, you got to get out of that town to become successful. And I was like, okay, well, I live like a king here in Berks County. If I moved to San Diego, I'd be broke. So I don't want to play that game. And so I'm going to prove you wrong, right? We now live in a world where you can work wherever you want, right? You can stay connected via Zoom with the people you love. You can do all these things. And honestly, what's stopping you from getting up, packing up, and moving in order to create that life? It's usually a limiting belief. It's a limiting belief that said, no, I have to be at this office every day, and I need to do this, and I need to stay in California because my parents are here, or my siblings are here, or whatever. But that's a limiting belief, like that it was ingrained in you for some odd reason. I did a lot of research over COVID about limiting beliefs because I was like, I want to start talking about this. And I realized that limiting beliefs through my research come from four main areas. The first one is society, which we actually touched on earlier in this conversation. Society says, hey, you're a woman, so you can't be that. Society says your parents are drug addicts and in jail, so you can't be successful. Society says all these things. And that's ingrained in us as a young child. And all of a sudden we accept it and we take it as truth. And so we carry that with us. That's one place. Second place is self, those self conversations. I always go back to a story like, say you're a young Justin and he asks the girl out on a date and she says, no, I'm interested in this person. And you go look in the mirror and go, oh man, you're ugly. She didn't say that. That's your own dialogue that you're creating for yourself and all these crazy things, right? The third place is like the big T traumas. There's a lot of things that therapy can help you through, but there are things that may have happened to some people in their life that they don't remember, but subconsciously their body still holds that energy. It's this scary thing where we're walking through life, stepping on cobblestones and broken glass, worried about like whatever, and we don't really know why, and we have to unpack that. And these limiting beliefs literally define us and program us. My limiting belief for a very long time was you are not enough. You are not enough. And so I had to figure out, where does that limiting belief come from? And it came from the idea that although my parents loved me, they made choices greater than me and chose those choices over me and being a fully 100% parent all the time. And so therefore I wasn't enough. I carried that with me and I wasn't enough. And it created a lot of problems in my life. And so I had to create a process to overcome this limiting belief. And if you don't mind me sharing, I'll share a 3-step process that I took into my life and I've taught other people and it's really helped them. It's a very simple, not easy, but simple 3-step process to overcome those. The first thing is you have to get uncomfortable, right? So what does that mean? My limiting belief is I have a slight stutter, so I can't be a public speaker. But I want to. I feel like I have a message. I need to share it. Then you have to get uncomfortable and you start speaking in front of people. And that could be recording videos and sharing them on the internet, finding a small room where you can share your message. That could be having your family sit down in front of you and you give a presentation. You have to begin to get uncomfortable. The second step is surrounding yourself with the right people. Getting uncomfortable is uncomfortable, right? So you need people who will support you through that process. And then the third thing is you have to take action because nothing works unless you do. For me, I was like, I am not enough. I had to get uncomfortable and admit that to myself and hire a therapist to openly talk about how I feel and why I feel that way. That's really uncomfortable. The second piece was I made sure the right people were around me. I knew I had love and supporting people around me that could understand it. And I started to share this journey with them. And the third piece is I started to take action, meaning every time that came up into my head, I had to have a dialogue with myself, whether it was in a mirror or whether it was internally, whatever, that is not true. Why am I thinking that? What are the processes and how can I keep showing up? And so over time, I've gotten a lot better. I'm not here to say I'm perfect. There are still times where that little noise comes up in the back of my head. But because of this process, it's a lot easier for me to dampen that limiting belief that was ingrained in me at such a young age. And so those are the crazy things that, like, if we can first understand where does it come from, then we can begin to do the work to overcome them. Then it's a lot easier for you to step into your power. It's a lot easier to move across the country from California. Are you in North or South Carolina?
North Carolina.
North Carolina. It's a lot easier, right? Because now all of a sudden, hey, that limiting belief is squashed. You took the uncomfortable action. Now all of a sudden you went, oh wait, that was easy. Right? So all these things we can take into our life, and it becomes a lot easier to make those decisions and do the hard thing. It's not worth being miserable not to take those uncomfortable actions.
It's action, right? Take action. If you are not happy with where you are, if you're feeling stuck, fried, burnout, you see the clock is ticking and like sand, it's just escaping through your fingers as you try to hold a fistful of sand. Like time is going too quickly. It's not the way I want it to go. You can sit and be miserable, and maybe that misery will lead to some health issues or self-soothing behaviors. But if you Take a little action towards yourself, maybe a little self-love, even if it's just with some self-discovery around what are your superpowers, anything. You never know what door's going to get open, what aha might spring into your mind about something you could do or a path you could pursue or explore. I think that's so important. And I hate to be Pollyannish, Justin, about this. Like, I'm a 2-time heart attack survivor. I get it. And life is short, carpe diem, all the things. And I literally sort of am sighing as I say this. Like, I don't want to run around like Chicken Little, like the sky's falling and you've got to carpe diem your face off right now. But the reality, like, kinda, like, you got one lap around this track. We don't know where our respective finish lines are. I had 2 false finish lines, and I'm very, 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 very lucky to be here. But if it's not working for you, take some action. Anything you'd add to that, or tell me I'm crazy?
Here's the thing, right? Like, I always look at, like, the universe is giving you signs when you hit those rock bottom moments, whatever that is, whether that's having a heart attack, whether that's losing a job, whatever your rock bottom moment is, the world is giving you these signs. For me, I realized that when I fell on my face after my mom passed away, I didn't share this earlier, but when my mom passed away, I went on a 3-month bender where I was blackout drunk 6 nights a week, maybe even 7, for 3 months straight. And I kind of came out of it and spoke. I remember calling my coach called me one day that I had at the time. And she's like, "What are you doing tonight?" And I said, "I'm going out with some friends." And she's like, "No, you're not. You're going to sit and you're going to feel this." And so that night I sat down and I felt the emotion of my mom passing away. And I knew that I was, numbing the pain and I was running from it. And I knew what I was doing. I was very self-aware. But then I wrote a letter to my mom and did this process and helped process me through all the grief that I was experiencing. I woke up the next day and I had this weight off of my shoulder. Although that night was one of the worst nights of my life, I had this weight off of my shoulder. I made a declaration that was my rock bottom moment. I was no longer going to allow my outside circumstances to dictate the decisions I make. So that doesn't mean bad things haven't happened since then. Bad things have happened. I just don't allow them to control my actions afterwards, right? And so if we can define our rock bottom moment saying, okay, this is it. I'm done. I am now going to take control of my life. That's when we win. The reality is if we ignore that sign, you're going to hit the next rock bottom moment. You might bounce back a little bit, but then you're going to hit the next one and the next one until it's too late. My mom kept hitting those rock bottom moments every time she relapsed until it was too late, right? And so if we can start to pay attention to what is happening for us instead of to us, right? Don't play the victim. Why is this happening for me? What's the lesson I need to take from this? And how can I fast forward? It makes it a lot easier. When COVID hit, I lost 75% of my income overnight. That was difficult, but I wasn't going to allow that to define what I was going to do going forward. Now, was it this aha moment of like, I'll just grab the bull by the horns and I'm just going to battle back? No, I had conversation with my wife. She was my girlfriend at the time, where I was like, I think I might need to get a job. And she goes, "No, we've got this. I know that you can do this." And so like, I didn't allow it to knee-jerk reaction of like, okay, I'm going to go get a job, get stuck back in corporate and be miserable again. We have to define that rock bottom moment so we can take control again. I think a lot of people ignore those signs.
Let's look forward here. What's coming up for you? What does the next few years look like for you?
Yeah, I'm glad you asked that. I always think about like back when I would interview a lot of people in my job when I was in medical sales management. Where do you see yourself in 5 years? And I often think about that now myself as an entrepreneur. I'm really good at living in the moment. I try my best at being present, enjoying the process, enjoying the moment, because I don't know when it's going to end. I have a newfound fear of flying. And so I go, what if this plane crashes tomorrow? So it's really hard for me to say, where will I be in 5 years? I always say, I want more of what I have now, to continuously live in abundance, to make a bigger impact, to reach more people, to make an impact in people's lives as I share my message and my journey. For me, there's a couple things that I really love that I do. One is the Skeleton Key Mastermind, and I hope that I can continuously help entrepreneurs build the life that they want. People come in and say, I want to grow my business, but it's really like we want to take control of our lives and build the life that we want. The second thing is my live event called Growth Now Summit Live, a day-long rock concert for entrepreneurs and forward thinkers, where I bring in some of the incredible guests I've had on my show to keynote. We do panels, but the most important piece is it's about building community. When people ask me, what's your favorite thing after your event? What's been your favorite thing? And honestly, it's the collaboration I see with people who attended. It's the connections that I see people making. I had somebody at my event this last year in April that for weeks after she was there, every guest on her show she met at my event. whether it was somebody in attendance who would be a great guest or somebody who was on the stage. And I love seeing that because it's building community and connection. And so those are the two things. And so Growth Now Summit Live is an annual event that I do in April in Westchester, Pennsylvania. In my future, I just see that getting bigger and better and allowing for more connection with human beings. If I had to say, hey, where will you be in 5 years? Just more of what I have now. A little bit more travel, a little bit more freedom, a little bit more money, a little bit more everything, right? Like it's just abundance wherever I want to be in 5 years from now. I love goals. They're really important, but I don't allow it to define my happiness. And I think that's where a lot of people get lost. They set a goal, and if they don't hit it, they're depressed. I set a goal, and if I don't hit it, I go, well, I probably got a lot closer than I would have if I didn't have that goal. And that's good enough for me. More of what I'm doing now and continuing to focus on the things that I love and the people that I love and just enjoy the process.
Where would you point people to follow you to get involved with some of these things if they want to know more?
Yeah. So wherever they're listening to this, they can go subscribe to Growth Now Movement is the podcast. They can find me. I always say, check out a couple episodes. If you vibe with it, click subscribe, come on the journey with me. It's a journey until whenever this thing ends. If they're interested in that event, they can go to growthnowsummit.com, grab their tickets. The one thing that I did and I will continuously do on purpose for this event is I make it super affordable. The whole idea of my live event got born because I realized I had this great opportunity because of my podcast to sit down and connect with some of the most incredible people in the world. And you're talking everybody from Gabby Bernstein, Ed Milet, to Kurt Angle to whatever. And I go, well, how can I take that and give that to other people and make it accessible? That's where I did it. And I remember the days where I didn't have that access and I didn't have the money to afford the masterminds or the $5,000 event. So it's super affordable, growthnowsummit.com for those tickets. And then I always say Instagram is my favorite place to hang out. So my handle is at Justin T. Schenck. You can see how to spell my last name in the show notes, but at Justin T. Schenck on Instagram. So those are the three places.
Well, everybody, that's Justin Schenck. Justin, thank you so much for being a guest on Code 3 Life Reinvented. If you'd like to learn about how we can help you reimagine or redefine what's possible in your career and life, please visit us at careerwellness.com. It's a growing destination for accomplished professionals at a crossroads who are ready to redefine what's possible. And on our website, we offer two things that may be helpful to you that are totally free. Number one, we have an exercise workbook to help you start getting you on a path to purpose and self-discovery. And then on Tuesdays, we offer complimentary 1-hour workshops, and you can sign up on our site, morecareerwellness.com. Please rate and review Code 3 Life Reinvented wherever you listen to your podcasts. And if you'd like to reach me with any comments, feedbacks, ideas, suggestions, you can reach me at hello@morecareerwellness.com. Thank you, Justin, again for being on the show. Remember, life doesn't wait for the perfect moment. It waits for the brave one. I'm AJ Jones, and this is Code 3 Life Reinvented. Until next time, keep growing, keep choosing you, and keep redefining what's possible. People, I'm not sure what you took away from our conversation with Justin, but I thought there were some really cool takeaways. This whole concept of the choices you make today will impact your tomorrow. Start making that investment for what you want your tomorrow to look like, in the literal tomorrow or the figurative tomorrow. These choices today matter. The concept of self-love, self-compassion, I could not agree any more with this. This is so vital, especially in today's world where we tend to run ourselves ragged, and busyness is sort of this badge of honor in a very strange way. But having that self-love to take a time out and really understand who you are and what makes you tick and choose you ultimately. One of two magic words that were said today. The first one was around authenticity and just being authentic. And that is just so true, and dialing into what your authentic truth is and then building out from there. Success. I mean, Justin, the way you talk about success, your 3 criteria to do what I want, with whom I want, and when I want. I think that is a really cool construct and may certainly be helpful for folks out there when they start thinking about how do I define success? And then I love this idea of when tackling the limiting beliefs of having the courage to call someone in your network, of professional nature, personal nature, see how you show up, see how they see what your superpowers are. You might be surprised what you hear, and it might also be a real hype call for you to lift you up and help you break through and move into new ways of thinking about where you're headed with your life and career. And the second magic A word around action. And I think that this is so important. Action creates clarity, whether it's a micro step, a massive step, whatever it is, that action can take clarity. So wherever you are in the spectrum of feeling stuck or too much on autopilot or not sure which way to go, take some action. And I think things will become clear. And ultimately, don't play the victim. You have agency over a lot of things here, and don't surrender to that mindset, and keep that growth mindset and that abundance mindset. And I think you will be rewarded. So anyways, those were some of my key takeaways. I was scribbling a lot of notes as you were talking, Justin. So thanks for these ideas.